Coming up next on Arizona Horizon's Journalists Roundtable, a bill signed by Governor Ducey this week could jeopardize health insurance for over 200,000 Arizonans, and the governor grants tax leniency to a helicopter tour company. Journalists Roundtable is next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon's Journalists Roundtable. I'm Ted Simons. Joining us tonight, Mary Jo Pitzel of the Arizona Republic, Jeremy Duda of the Arizona Capital Times, and Jim Small of the Arizona Capital Times. Governor signed a bill this week that could make for major changes to health care in the state if a Supreme Court ruling goes a certain direction. Give us the background on this.
Currently before the Supreme Court is a case that would say people who get their health care subsidies through a federal health care exchange, are they actually entitled to that? Is that actually allowed under the Affordable Care Act? This is the Burwell case that's being considered now by the U.S. Supreme Court. If the court says, people on the federal health care exchange don't qualify for subsidies, then every Arizonan, about 150,000 of them who get their insurance through the exchange will not get those subsidies. And you would have to have a state health care exchange, except the bill that Governor Ducey signed into law prohibits the state from establishing such a state health care exchange.
If it involves federal health care, correct?
Correct.
Or, yeah,
I mean,
okay.
that's what we're talking about, a state health care exchange.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and this decision may come down in June or something like that. I'm assuming there's a plan B in case the decision goes a certain way?
Governor Ducey says, well, if that happens, we'll come up with some good plans, but he did not exactly elaborate on what those plans were. And, it seems like for now the plan is that, 200,000 people or so are going to lose their, health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. Now, of course, all this does is prevent the state from establishing one of these exchanges, and of course that can be reversed. But the flip side of this, of course, is that, if the Supreme Court rules against the Obama administration in King v. Burwell, and Governor Ducey said, well, we need to create our own health care exchange, you'd have a heck of a fight over there at the legislature. There's no real guarantee that he would actually be able to get that through. I mean, we all remember the Medicaid expansion fight from a couple of years ago. This might have been worse.
There is another option, too, aside from the state creating its own, is the federal government can still run it, the state can sponsor it, essentially. That's one of the maneuvers that's allowed in the law, and we'll see how that Burwell decision comes down, whether it would affect those kinds of things as well, where the state would essentially, put its stamp of approval on the exchange, but still let the federal government run it. Because one of the things that, if they were to go down the route of trying to establish a state exchange, which I think is highly unlikely, it would take at a minimum 9 months, probably closer to a year, and it would cost somewhere in the neighborhood of about $50 to $60 million just to do that whole process of creating that from the ground up, even with all the groundwork that was laid in the Brewer administration before she abandoned those plans.
Right. Didn't the state get money from the feds to explore establishing its own exchange? And where did that money go towards?
That went toward exploring, I would suppose. They never actually got anything off the ground and started putting together some of that framework for it, and that's, that it's an expensive proposition.
Okay, help me here now. Clarify this for me. Again, I thought the law says no state fund, no personnel for any exchange that involves federal issues. You're saying there's a way to sidestep around that?
Well, there might be. I think it depends on A, how that ruling comes down, and B, how that process would work in terms of the state sponsoring a federally run exchange.
Right. And this legislation, which was sponsored by Representative Justin Olson from Mesa, is an exercise of last year's Proposition 122, which voters approved, and it said we're not going to use any state resources, staff, time, etc., to comply with the federal program unless it's approved by the voters or approved by the legislature. And that's why, as these guys have pointed out, it would be a hard pull in the current legislature to get them to establish a healthcare exchange.
Yeah, and I think, incidentally, the state could have done all of this without Prop 122, which I think is kind of interesting. I don't know that really allows the state to do anything that it couldn't have done already, but it kind of puts kind of a more constitutional imprimatur on it, I guess.
What kind of reaction are we hearing from hospitals? What are we hearing from healthcare providers? What are we hearing from those who might be affected?
Well, certainly from the hospital and healthcare provider side, they don't want to see people go off of the insurance rolls. I mean, one of the reasons for doing the Medicaid restoration and expansion was to decrease uncompensated care, where you have people who don't have insurance who show up at the ER because, say, they've had a flu that's developed into pneumonia because they couldn't go get it treated. The same thing would go for people who were able to get their insurance on the exchange. These are now people who have access to affordable health care that they can use for preventative services instead of for emergency services. And those are costs that are A, expensive, and B, get passed on to everyone else in the state who has insurance. So they're not happy about it. They want to see, ultimately they want to see the court reject this lawsuit and uphold these subsidies. If that doesn't happen, though, I mean, I think that really they're dependent on either the states acting, in Arizona's case. I think that that's a Herculean task, and that's probably putting it nicely, or for Congress to ask, which may be even less of a possibility than the state acting.
And of course, for the the healthcare industry in Arizona, this is one of 3 major hits they might be taking this year. And according to the State Hospital Association, kind of the lesser of the 3. There's this Medicaid expansion lawsuit,
Yes.
which is the big one, which could cost a lot of people their health care. And going back to that Herculean effort a couple of years ago, that was such a major deal for the hospitals to cut down on uncompensated care. If this lawsuit from lawmakers succeeds, that'll go away. You had some major hit cuts to Medicaid funding in the budget, to the provider rates. That's a pretty big hit. If all three of these things kind of converge at once, I mean, it could be pretty disastrous for the healthcare industry. They're talking, maybe even if all 3 of these things happen, they might have to go to the ballot for some kind of initiative.
Well, disastrous for the healthcare industry. What about the budget? The state budget? I mean, goodness gracious, the goalposts are spinning all over the place.
Well, you mean if the healthcare exchange thing doesn't work out? Well, possibly some of the people that currently are getting their insurance through the federal healthcare exchange, I don't know, if their income would fall to such a point that they would go on the state's Medicaid program access, then that costs the state more money.
Yeah, no kidding. The governor seemed to sign this bill somewhat quietly on Friday, and then we didn't hear about it till Monday. What's that all about?
Yeah, there was some kind of miscommunication in terms of when they reported bills that were signed. It didn't show up on the list of bills that were signed on Friday. Showed up on Monday as being listed as being signed on Friday, so we didn't really figure it out until late in the day Monday that this bill had apparently been signed before the weekend started.
Read anything into that, or just miscommunication?
Too much. I mean, sometimes things fall through the cracks. I think they've done that with I've seen some other legislation where that's happened earlier in the session, where they accidentally listed as being signed on the wrong day. So hard to say.
Okay, the governor also, and this is another one that's kind of confusing here, he grants a tax reprieve to a chopper firm, a helicopter firm, despite the court ruling that they owe back taxes, and he vetoed a bill that would have kept him from the back. Help me.
So we had legislation that came through that the governor vetoed that would have exempted charter air tour operators, charter operators, and crop dusters from basically state sales tax. He said, and it had a retroactive clause, and that's why he vetoed it. He said, I don't know, we don't know how much money we might be on the hook for if we, if we make this retroactive. We don't know if we got the money to cover that. So I'm vetoing this, but I'm going to tell the Department of Revenue, don't collect on any current efforts. And the big current effort is one involving Papillion Helicopters, which is a tour operator out of the Grand Canyon in Las Vegas. And 3 levels of court or judicial proceedings culminating in the State Court of Appeals has found that this company owes the state for a period of about 3 full years where it did not collect or pay state sales tax, and that amounts to about $700,000 without fines.
So why is he offering them this reprieve? What's this all about?
Well, he said he's sympathetic to the intent of the bill, and just had the concerns over the the retroactive clause. I think maybe they're hoping that this kind of all works out. This case is on appeal. They've appealed to the state Supreme Court, and maybe they're hoping that the Supreme Court reverses this. Maybe they're hoping that they can just send this back next year without the retroactive clause, or find some other sort of solution. But the retroactive clause, unintended consequences galore, possibly.
Well, this is interesting. This is kind of harkens back to the Uber Lyft thing from back in January before the Super Bowl, where there was a law in the books, and the governor's office said, in the interests of being a pro-business state, we're going to ignore this law and not enforce it until the legislature does something to fix it. I don't think the governor called for necessarily a legislative fix in this regard. I mean, we'll wait and see if that is indeed the path that they go down. But this case is, though, a little bit different because of the court action. I mean, you've got an appellate court that's ruled on this already, and if the Supreme Court either declines to take up the case or takes it up and affirms, then you're in a little bit of a different situation where now you have an administration telling an agency to ignore a court order, which is it's a far cry from just looking the other way on these taxis until you can get that regulated.
And it raises the question of, since there is I'm told there's more than one potential beneficiary from this other than just the helicopter tour operator, but I'm not sure who those folks are. But how can you, if you're singling out a couple of individuals, how can you do that when we have it's a gift, and we're not supposed to be giving gifts away with state money and state credit?
$700,000 gift.
Yeah, and kind of a eerie precedent to set where you can just tell an agency that, we want you to, or the Department of Revenue say, we just want you to stop collecting taxes on these folks or stop enforcing, taxes. I'm sure we'd all love to get that same kind of benefit as well.
And I'm not sure that you can do that, but nobody's really challenging it.
Well, that's a good, I was going to ask about that. The governor seems, I don't want to use the word imperial here, but there seems to be a little bit of an imperial nature to his actions. I mean, he really says, it's kind of I'm deciding this.
I think the correct phrase is chief executive that you're looking for.
Yes.
No, it is in that way. And that seems, we've seen some other instances of that thus far in the administration. And obviously they're still in their, I guess they're past their first 100 days now, but we're, in the first 105 days still. and they, but there is some of that approach, and it, like Mary Jo said, who is going to challenge some of this stuff?
Department of Revenue?
Yeah,
But it just seems odd that he says, okay, don't go after it right now. Court decision may come down. What's it good? Go after it. I decree you go after it now. That seems odd to me, or eerie, as Jim.
It does, and I think that we haven't seen the end of this particular situation yet. This hasn't played itself out yet, and I think we're going to have to wait and see. And if ultimately the Supreme Court picks up this case and issues a ruling, upholding that these taxes need to be paid, I think that does change things a little bit, and we'll have to see how the administration would react to that.
All right, this is another one that just is very strange. There are renovation plans, among other plans, for the House of Representatives, correct? And the Speaker of the House, I'm sure, is in front of that parade. Is anyone behind him in this parade?
Well, at least half of his caucus is not. These are renovation plans on top of renovation plans. Early in the session, Speaker Gowan authorized about $375,000 in the renovations. Turns out now there's a new round rumored to be costing as much as $1 million for showers, a multi-purpose room that may or may not be a gym, and a lot of 18 House Republicans, half of his caucus, were pretty disturbed by this because they learned about this from the press. They didn't learn about this from him, and this looks bad just based on, they just finished a legislative session where they were slashing budgets left and right. A lot of people are upset, and here is the House authorizing $1 million in new expenditures. This led 18 House Republicans, his own members, to write a letter expressing their displeasure and saying they want a bipartisan committee. They want the Democrats to help to review and approve any internal House expenditures over $25,000.
Well, I don't want to do Captain Bligh here. It may not be a capital M mutiny, but is a small M mutiny going on here?
It's definitely, think about you're riding on a train and you got that emergency cord to pull to hit the brake, the emergency brakes. That's what they did. And this is not we're not taking over control of the train yet, but this is a big deal. When you have half the caucus, and folks we talk with we talked to people in that caucus today who weren't approached to sign that letter. They weren't able to get it to them, who said, I would have signed it. So you're looking, this number could have easily been more than 20. And that's, well more than half the caucus. This is definitely a big deal. And I think the Speaker's office is trying to figure out how to react to it and what's going on and what the next step forward is. My prediction is that you're not going to see $1 million spent on renovations. You may see some renovations done, and frankly, there probably are some renovations that need to be done.
But that wasn't the only thing here. Wasn't it the excessive spending not only for this, but wasn't there staff pay raises and things like this going on as well?
Yeah, and that was part of the, when Jeremy alluded to the renovations done before session, one of the other things that happened was when David Gowan took over as Speaker, there's always a transition in staff whenever there's kind of a turnover in leadership, and he brought in some of his own people, some new people who were paid at higher salaries in some cases than their predecessors, and also some of the existing staff got pay raises. Some of it for retention, some of it as kind of a reward for doing good work in the past year or two, and so that combined with the $375,000 earlier renovation, combined with the rumored scope of this upcoming renovation and the fact that they didn't hear about it from leadership or staff, that they had to hear about it from us, throw in the fact then just the cherry on top of this is that Democrats knew about it. Democratic leadership knew because all of their staff's offices are in the basement. So they'd been consulted with for months on this plan. And so there were a number of Republicans who, you know, are conservative, you know, not the kind of Republicans who, you know, joined with Jan Brewer, who would be castigated a lot as, you know, opponents of conservatives like David Gowan, who signed that letter and who are not happy at all about this.
How is the Speaker perceived by his colleagues down there?
Well, I think this is marking a public show of disapproval of this. I mean, you've got to keep in mind that these lawmakers, I mean, the Republican ones of them, they're going back to their districts and they have to answer to constituents who might have concerns about a $100 million cut to universities and cuts to education funding, and, you know, concerns about, you know, now, you know, well, and why are we giving a tax break to, you know, or why did you pass legislation that would have given tax breaks to certain people? So there's a real concern that you look, you know, that you look like you're benefiting yourself while hurting others.
And I think there are some members over there who, for some of them, this is kind of piling on top of some other dissatisfaction they may have had with the Gowan speakership so far. You know, things started late every day. Things kind of dragged on to the point where on, you know, Sine Die Day, the Senate adjourned in the middle of House deliberations while it's still going on. So this may have kind of piled on top of that. And you know, on that list of 18 House Republicans, you saw a couple of folks who wanted that job instead of him as well. It's worth noting.
It just seems as that last day of the session, I thought, could this be possibly somehow influenced by it, or just piling on, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is just kind of the culmination of a lot of things. And
yeah, but I mean, you know, and yeah, you look at Sine Die. I mean, that was a very drawn-out day where they were taking recesses every 5 minutes, so things weren't moving along, and, you know, keeping people there late. There was one member who was, you know, ailing, and he was
laying on the floor.
He was laying on the floor, nursing a very sore back,
yes.
you know, but hanging in there to do his job.
Interesting stuff. All right, real quickly, marijuana legalization. There's a ballot measure. Looks like it's going to hit for 2016. This is the one. Correct me if I'm wrong, this is backed by the DC group, correct?
It appears to be now. There's actually some friction between a couple of sides of this movement where, you know, this national movement we've been seeing for, you know, marijuana legalization measures and our own medical marijuana thing out here a few years ago. It's all backed by this Washington group called the Medical Marijuana Project.
Marijuana
Policy Project, sorry. And, you know, they had formed an alliance with some local groups, and, you know, just a couple of weeks ago we saw a very serious schism where the local groups, some dispensary owners, wanted to start their own initiative. Now it looks like that's at least been healed enough. They're all back on board and they're all backing this new initiative.
So there is a healing?
Maybe.
Oh, but are they? Is really the question. You know, and I mean, I talked to folks today who are involved, you know, knee deep in these discussions and what's going on here, who said, not so fast. You know, we're not totally on board. We're working towards it, and we think that we're going to get there, but we're not there yet. And, you know, this whole thing today was kind of the counter to what we saw 3 weeks ago when you had the other group that broke off and publicly said, no, we're the group that's going to do it. Now you have this group coming out saying, no, we're the group that's going to do it. And, you know, I think you're seeing a lot of very public, some hardball negotiating tactics, you know, being aired in public.
Do these different groups, do they have competing visions on how marijuana should be legalized and what the money should go for?
I think the biggest issue that's going to exist here are two things. One is existing medical marijuana dispensaries. You had the people who supported that and the people who spent a lot of money to get those dispensaries up and running. What is their future? How are they going to make sure that they protect their business interests? And then two, what is, you know, in terms of some of the deregulation, what people can grow at home, some of the other things that may not sit well with the public writ large. How are those things going to be worked out? I'd say probably the chief concern, I mean, if I was to guess, would probably be that business concern. You know, how do these medical marijuana dispensary owners recoup their investment and make sure that they have the inside track on making the money on legalized dispensaries?
And that's one thing that this initiative that was filed today does, is it kind of gives those folks, the people who have already gotten started here in medical marijuana, kind of gives them the leg up in getting these licenses, which at least for a while would be somewhat limited. I think about 150 medical or legal recreational marijuana retailers would be allowed in the state for at least like the first 5 or 6 years, I think.
And real quickly, the sales tax for marijuana will be 15% according to this, with 40% going to K-12, 40% going to all-day kindergarten, 20% for the Department of Health Services. With all that in mind, does it have a chance?
You know, medical marijuana squeaked by. We've had a couple of years of this state having that operate here, as well as what we've seen happening in Colorado, it all depends on turnout and you know, how what kind of voters show up. And I will add that 15%, that's on top of existing sales tax.
Right,
so that's
yeah.
that's a big chunk of change.
That sure is. All right, we get back into controversy here with the former Department of Administration director is threatening a lawsuit against a former chief of staff to a former governor. There's a lot of formers going on here, but this is kind of a nasty little business here.
Yeah, this was filed by Brian McNeil, who is the director of the Department of Administration under Jan Brewer. Up until a couple of months before she left office, he was fired just a few months before she was supposed to leave. A few days, no reason was really given. A few days later, Brewer administration released some documents showing that an employee, African-American woman, had filed a complaint with federal officials alleging gender and racial discriminatory comments. Brian McNeil, what he filed this week was a notice of claim, which is kind of something you have to file, kind of a precursor to suing the state, and claiming the legal claim is that these documents, these EEOC complaints, these were illegally released. They were confidential information that was released to make him look bad. But it seems like the kind of wider claim is, kind of wider purpose is to kind of clear his name. There's a lot of dirty laundry aired in this, a lot of complaints against Scott Smith, who was Jan Brewer's chief of staff, with whom Mr. McNeil clashed a lot of allegations about them improperly interfering in agencies and legislation, and
mismanagement, waste of money, abuse of power, refusing to do something or not do something illegal. I mean,
some vague claims about how he could have filed a whistleblower complaint if he wanted, because he thinks he was fired for disclosing possibly illegal activity or refusing to engage in illegal activity. So there's a lot of stuff in there.
What is all this about? What's going on here? Just a man trying to clear his name?
Well, certainly.
Obviously that, but
yeah.
I mean, what else is going on?
There are lots of suggestions that this is a conflict between two very strong personalities. We'll see if the basis. I mean, you don't really have to have a whole lot of a reason for dismissing someone from state service.
Well, you need no reason.
Yeah, but you can't have a bad reason, and that's So if you can prove that maybe the bad reason was bad blood, maybe he's got a chance. But yeah, this is definitely a way to try to clear his name.
Well, the whistleblower allegations weren't even part of the legal claims. This guy's seeking almost $1.5 million, and the actual legal claims are really just limited to release of confidential information and what he says was intentionally painting him in a bad light. But then there is, about the second half of this complaint goes into, well, I could file a whistleblower complaint and I'm not going to, but if I were going to, here's all the stuff that would be in it.
Here's what I could do if I wanted. All right, the governor vetoes some measures to take over federal lands. No real surprise here. A couple of bills that says we get all public lands and we get to sell whatever we want to make as much money as we want. No surprise. But he said let's get a search committee or a research committee or a study committee.
Yeah, I think there's a study committee that legislation got signed on that to explore the idea that I think that's to deliver a report by the end of 2019. I mean, so they're not exactly going to be working at a breakneck pace here. And it's definitely kicking the can not just down the road a little bit, but way down the road. I mean, it's often referred to down at the Capitol as death by study committee, and this looks to be a prime example of that. Yeah,
whereas Jan Brewer had vetoed some similar legislation a few years ago, saying, "Well, gee, I'm not entirely sure this is constitutional." The way Governor Ducey put it, it's like, "Well, we don't need this because we've got this study committee, and from there we're going to work some things out." And I think this is kind of a trend we're seeing from the new governor is kind of a tendency to split the middle on some of these controversial issues that are going to pit the establishment against the Tea Party wing, where the Tea Party wing wants to take back our land from the feds. More establishment types might not want to get us in the New York Times and national news for that kind of fight. So kind of split the middle, say, well, we're not going to do this, but we're going to do this, and this is going to kind of set us on the path to finding a solution.
We've got about 30 seconds left, and that was another one of those chief executive type actions there, as opposed to imperial. But and Raul Castro died this week, age of 98. Obviously, first Mexican-American governor of Arizona. Wasn't in office very long, and the more we talked about and did stories on him, the more we realized he wasn't all that happy being governor, because he thought that I'm the governor, doggone it, and you should do what I say, and people weren't doing what he said.
As opposed to today.
Yeah, but it is interesting that we're talking about that with the current governor and a past governor. That was basically his biggest problem being in office. What was the reaction down there? Is institutional memory so short that...
Well, I don't know about to that comment, but certainly, I think recognizing his place in Arizona history, that was the more dominant comment.
Okay, all right. Well, we got to go. Would have had more time to talk about Governor Castor, but that's it. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. And that is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you for joining us. You have a great weekend.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.